So we continue today with chapter 3 of A Prophet for Our Time, or A Prophet for Today, by Rabbi Stephen Pruzansky about the prophet Joshua, Yehoshua. And this chapter is called Yehoshua and the Angel of God. Yehoshua is moving on. On the eve of the Jewish people's entry into the land of Israel, Yehoshua revived two defining institutions of Jewish life that surprisingly had been neglected throughout the sojourn in the desert: Bris Milah, the rite of circumcision, and the Pesach offering. So the entire time in the desert, they didn't bring the Pesach offering. They brought it the first year when they were in Mitzrayim, and they brought it the first year in the desert, because remember the conversation about Pesach Sheni, right? Mm-hmm. That
it means 2 weeks later.
we're carrying the kever of Yosef HaTzadik.
Months later.
What?
It was months later, yeah?
Pesach Sheni is a month after Pesach. Mm-hmm. And because they were dealing with the tumah of death, because it was the bones of Joseph, we think that's the reason. It's not clear, but there's a good opinion that that's the reason. They came to Moses and said, "We can't bring the sacrifice because we're impure. We're tumadik, and we don't think it's fair because we're doing a service to the nation, bringing the bones of Joseph." And Moshe consulted with God, and God said, "In that case, we'll have a second Pesach, a month later. That is to say, 30 days after the first Pesach, to give them time to become tahor, to become pure. And then they can bring their sacrifice at that time." This is a unique holiday, because in a sense it's a holiday created by people. It wasn't one that was ordained originally in the Torah, right? But because the people complained to Moshe, and Moshe went to God and said, "What should we do?" I mean, you can think there's a couple of possibilities. God could have said, "Well, they missed out. That's all. They did a wonderful thing. They have the merit of carrying Yosef out, and that's enough, and next year they'll bring it." Or he could have said, "I'll create a heter, a permission, in this case. It's the bones of a tzaddik, so maybe the tomb is not so great, so they can bring." Right? But no, God said that their complaint is legitimate, and that they shouldn't be denied the opportunity, so somebody else will carry the bones going forward. They'll purify themselves, and they'll be able to bring a paschal sacrifice the following month. I think that the lesson from this for us is the idea that there are second chances, that we don't have to get it perfect the first time. We should try, for sure. But that God, it's not an all or nothing business with God, that God is open to our improving ourselves and making exceptions for the effort involved. Yes?
Could it be one of the first instances when people, it was a case when people initiated new way to observe Torah?
Yeah.
Like all the minhagim started from him, all the humrah starting from here.
I heard a little bit different opinion about the Pesach Sheni.
Let me just react to Yoanna. I don't think that you can call it a minhag, because when it was raised, specifically God said this is a din. Mm-hmm. That from now on there will always be Pesach Sheni, and we have tradition a month after Pesach to recognize it's Pesach Sheni. Have a piece of matzah, give it some thought, although we don't celebrate it in the same sense.
When the temple would be standing again, it doesn't mean that on this day people who were tumadik at that day, women who couldn't come to the temple, who gave birth or whatever, they will do it at this day?
I believe so. I think so.
Yeah, but the ladies was different, because if everything goes normal, so next month she's again going to be...
No. People who give birth wouldn't go to...
Yeah. What about Nida, if she's Nida?
Oh, that's understand. Yeah.
But what I heard a little bit different. Again, it was with the Tuma, but Jews were burying Jews who died at Makat Choshech.
Also, yeah. There's many opinions on
and
this.
there was
Right?
bearing and
Right.
and when it comes to the
Yeah.
Because it was like 2 weeks in between the Maccas, yeah? They were not yet. How many of the weeks were...
No, it was right. It was very soon after. It was within the 30 days. Could be. It could be.
We buried, and actually it
Yeah.
was the first Chevra Kadisha, the first...
It's interesting. It's interesting. The Chevra Kadisha is the burial society,
Jewish burial
the
society.
people responsible for guarding the body and protecting the body after death, between death and burial, preparing the body for it. It's a volunteer organization. Very, very special people usually are involved in doing this. And by the way, we've just passed Adar 7 of the first Adar, which is a very significant day because it's the birthday and the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it is actually the day that is the feast of the Chevra Kadisha. That because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to be prepared for death. Right? When God brought him up to the mountain, God performed all the requirements of the Chevra Kadisha himself on Moshe Rabbeinu and took him not as a normal death, but with a kiss from the Shekhinah. So because of that, this is the day that the Chevra Kadisha gathers together themselves for a special dinner once a year that they have together. You know, it's a day off. Yeah, a day off. So the Pesach offering was not brought throughout the time in the desert, and the same was true with Bris Milah. The Midrash Rabbi comments on this, and I just wanted to mention because they had stopped doing Bris Milah quite soon after Yosef died, with the exception of the Levim. It says, this is from Midrash Rabbi, right? And I think everybody remembers the line, now there arose a new king. So the Midrash Rabbi writes on this, now there arose a new king. The rabbis commenced this discourse with the verse, they have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. Now shall the new moon devour them with their portions. This is from the prophet Hosea. And the Medrash brings this in relationship to the comment of the new king. The new king and the new moon are similar in this conversation. This teaches that when Yosef died, they abolished the covenant of circumcision. Note, others say that this abolition was one of the hard decrees which Paro made. So there's one view that they voluntarily said, we're done with this, and there's another view that said that the new king enforced the law that they couldn't do circumcision. But it goes on to say that they abolished the covenant of circumcision, saying, let us become like the Mitzri. You can infer from this that the fact that Moshe had to circumcise them on their departure from Egypt, as soon as they had done so, God converted the love with which the Egyptians loved them into hatred. As it is written, he turned their heart to hate his people, to deal craftily with his servants. Remember, the Egyptian people themselves were not hostile for most of our time in Egypt with the Jews. It was the leadership and the military and the ruling parties. Only later the people began to hate the Jews as well. His people to deal craftily with his servants, to fulfill that which is said, now shall the new moon devour them and their portion. A new king, meaning the new moon, because he made new decrees, who did not know Yosef. Did he then not know Yosef? He can be compared with Rav Avin. He can be compared, said Rav Avin, to one who stoned a friend of the king, whereupon the king commanded, behead him, lest tomorrow he do the same to me. The Bible therefore wrote concerning him, as it were, today he does not know Yosef. Tomorrow he will declare, I do not know God himself. So from this we understand that the Jews stopped keeping Bris Milah at this time. So it says here that and they didn't keep the Pesach offering. All the people who left Egypt were circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness on the way during their exodus from Egypt were not circumcised. An entire generation had perished in the wilderness, but the children of God raised their stead. So Yehoshua circumcised their stead. Those Yehoshua circumcised since they were uncircumcised, because they did not circumcise them on the way. This is from Yeshua itself in 5:5. That's a statement from it, that he took it upon himself, and it said there were piles of foreskins, hills of foreskins at the
Because
time.
out of the population, it was a population age 20 and up.
That's right.
Who died out in the desert.
That's right.
It
That's
means the rest from 13 till 20, it was enough of, some of them were circumcised.
Not 13, from...
No, they weren't
People who
circumcised
left.
in Egypt. Oh, they were circumcised in Moshe when they left.
In order to leave
Yeah,
Egypt,
that's
you had
right.
to be circumcised.
Moshe
It means
circumcised them,
whoever
yeah.
was from 13 till 20, or not 13, whoever,
Really, from 8 days.
from 8 days to 20
Yeah.
were circumcised.
Right,
But whoever was born, they were not circumcised.
right.
Whoever was born in the people were born in the desert?
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
People were
Yeah,
being
yeah,
born
yeah.
in the desert?
Yeah, you don't have to knock on the way back. Just come on in.
Okay.
Yeah. And after celebrating the first anniversary of the redemption from Egypt, the observance of Pesach had been suspended for the duration of the Jewish people's wandering in the wilderness. Essentially, Yehoshua repeated the process of redemption that had ushered them out of Egypt exactly 40 years earlier. Then, too, the people had been uncircumcised, having forsaken the covenant of Abraham after the death of Joseph. Before the Exodus, Moshe required circumcision of all males as a prerequisite for participation in the Pesach offering.
What was the cause? Because they were not circumcised, they didn't keep the... Why didn't they keep the... just commemorate?
Because if you are not circumcised,
Well, you can-
cannot eat
You
the-
can't take... Yeah, that's...
But it's a
Guy is right. Is the
You
two are
cannot-
connected.
Why they couldn't...
You cannot eat
Yeah,
the
you can't...
korban.
You can't take... You can't have the... Pesach wasn't the Seder.
But
It was
why
the
we
Pesach
don't eat
offering.
today?
What?
Why we don't eat today?
Don't eat what today?
They
The
have a
korban.
temple.
We don't have a temple. Where are we going to
So
bring
how,
it? By the way, there
Jews-
are some people who bring it on the Temple Mount if they can get away with it,
no,
or
but,
close to it.
But I know that some Jews from, I don't know, Bukhara or Caucasus, this area, they do bring offering.
No, they don't. They have lamb.
They have lamb, yeah.
Yeah, it's. By the way, there's lots of people who have lamb, right?
Even it says you should still have a lamb?
What? The question of lamb or not lamb, we'll get to that when we get to the Pesach class in more detail, right? But there are many people who do have lamb, in fact.
But not roasted.
What?
But not roasted.
Generally not roasted, right?
Can we have roasted chicken?
What?
Roasted chicken?
Rav Shochet always says that the roasted chicken should have some liquid in the bottom of the pan. That it shouldn't be like on a spit roasted. It can be better baked with some liquid in it. That it shouldn't be crispy. Right. And the reason we do this is not to imitate to pretend that we're bringing an offering, that we can bring an offering. That's why. Some people are much stricter on this, in terms of their observance, so they won't bring meat, and they'll just have, chicken. Mm-hmm. Some people will bring lamb. It varies in communities. But we'll come to that more in the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. In Shmos 48, from chapter 12, verse 48, it says, "And if a stranger sojourns with you and wishes to make a Pesach offering to God, then all his males must be circumcised. Then he may come near to make it, and it shall be like a native of the land. No uncircumcised person may eat of it." So this is a very interesting statement, if you think about it, right? Rav Hirsch analyzes it. But this is a prohibition of not sharing the Korban Pesach or making the Korban Pesach with somebody who is uncircumcised. You can see here that it's actually saying a ger, specifically, right? That a ger can eat of the sacrifice if he's circumcised. Circumcision is the issue here, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, a stranger. Right?
And if it's not
If he's not Jewish but circumcised?
It seems clear.
Here it's...
It's not a ger tzedek, right? It says
What is it, ger and ger tzedek? Ger tzedek, it's the...
I'm going to come to that now. Give me a moment or two, okay? Okay. So, at this time, I'm going to read you it's a really interesting note from Rav Hirsch on this, so I want to share this with you. At this time, upon the establishment of the Jewish nation, it is declared that the establishment of this nation is not just for the sake of the descendants of Avraham, those redeemed from Egypt and their posterity. The events that transpired from the days of Abraham until the redemption from Egypt transpired for the benefit of all mankind. Not just for the Jewish people.
All circumcised mankind.
Anybody can be circumcised. Right? That's a choice a person makes. Any man can make this past his own and enter the circle of the redeemed. In God's state, what matters is not lineage or connection to the homeland, but only one's inner life and one's humanity. One who is born a Jew forfeits his title if he becomes a ben Nachri, a pagan, estranged from his people. Conversely, one who is born pagan attains equal rights as soon as he and his family join God's covenant with Israel.
Hold on, can you repeat with the Nochri? Nochri cannot eat?
It says, one who is born a Jew, this is Rav Hirsch saying, forfeits his title if he becomes a ben Nachri, a pagan, estranged from his people. And we're going to later on we're going to see the list of what this requires, right? Such a person is estranged from his people. Yeah, he shouldn't eat. Right?
But we don't. It's very hard to explain.
So you want to tell me that Palestinians, I can take Palestinian to my Seder table and just to feed them because they are circumcision?
We'll come to. Give me some time. Give me some time. No, there's more requirements than just circumcision. Right? Ger Tashuv is not a Jew. Well, let me continue a little bit, okay? Conversely, one who is born a pagan attains equal rights as soon as he and his family join God's covenant with Israel. Right? Moreover, the Jewish state is ready to grant the right of domicile with all the attendant civil rights to any man, even if he does not become a Jew, as long as he becomes a ger toshav and accepts upon himself the obligations emanating from his vocation as a human being, as we noted in verse 45. And just be patient with me because I want to give you the definition of ger toshav because it's important. A ger toshav, a ger tzedek is somebody who becomes Jewish, right? Who we call today a convert, right? There's another category called ger toshav, right? One who is not a full citizen or a hired hand may not eat of the paschal offering. This is a ger toshav. He can live in Israel, but he can't eat of the sacrifice, right? Toshav. In the land of the Jewish people, any stranger without accepting Judaism could acquire the right of domicile, the permission to live there, with all the attendant civil rights, as long as he renounced idolatry and accepted the general laws of humanity. Such a man was Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Such a man was called Tashuv, one who has the right of domicile. Tashuv is one whose connection with a Jewish home is merely that of a hired laborer, somebody who accepts the concepts of B'nai Noach and Yiddishkeit, right, and is employed in a Jewish home, is a ger tashuv. He's not somebody who necessarily requires. I don't think he requires bris. But this person, but this person doesn't eat at the seder, right?
But your slave would.
Right. A slave is a different situation. We'll get to it in a second, right? But this person doesn't, right? But he's welcome to live in Israel, right? So he's a ger tashuv. A ger tzedek is a convert. He has full rights. Right?
You know how many today gerim like this in Israel that who comes with a Jewish wife or Jewish husbands? So if there is seder, they cannot eat. We cannot.
We'll deal with the halachas of the seder as we get closer to it. Okay?
Remember, you don't cook for him.
Right? Yeah. Unlike a ger tzedek, a man who has become a Jew, Unlike a ger tzedek, a man who has become a Jew, a ger tashav can make the Pesach offering on his own. Sorry, a ger tzedek can make the Pesach offering on his own. Sorry, unlike a ger tashav, a ger tzedek, a man who became a Jew, a convert, can make the Pesach offering on his own behalf and on behalf of his family, despite the fact that his forefathers were not among those who went forth from Egypt. For it was for his sake as well that the forefathers of Israel suffered in Egypt and then received their freedom from the hand of God. So this is a very important idea, is that we understand, and it is part of the Jewish psychological DNA, that this freedom that we won from Paro, from the arch tyrant Paro, right, was not intended just to be the winning of freedom for the Jewish people, but that it was a symbolic of all of the freedoms that were yet to be won from tyrants who saw themselves as gods, and that this was the prototype of that revolution, and you see that this is something that Jews never let go of. Sometimes they approach it in a not the wisest way possible, but it's always for this purpose of making the world better, taking off the bonds of slavery off the backs of people.
And it's a prototype of every progressive movement, you would think?
Yeah. This is the famous point that Jean-Paul Sartre makes in Anti-Semitism of the Jew, is he points out that Jews have always been at the forefront of all progressive movements. And then he asks a question that he has trouble with, that he's curious with, and he says, but they seem to be the first ones to betray the movement, is the phrase that he uses. And he's unclear as to why that is, right? For those of us who are observant Jews, the answer is very clear, that we have a unrelenting desire to create a messianic world, a world in which right triumphs over might, a world in which the weak are protected and cared for, a world in which the strong have to obey the laws, they're not above the laws, many things. Those who need will have. That's something that is built into us really from Avraham Avinu, going all the way back there, but certainly through this whole process. And so, if you're not a religious Jew, this attempt to create a messianic world doesn't disappear. You go about doing it in the ways that you feel are the most possible ways to do it. So somebody like Trotsky, is an example of a person who is trying to create a messianic world that went completely off the rails, and ended up in a brutal tyranny of the worst kind. And we see it happens over and over and over again. We saw it happen with the French Revolution. This goes on often. And why? Because messianic rule cannot happen without God. You can't take God out of the process and hope it will succeed, because man will eventually corrupt it. And when he corrupts it with all the power that he has, it's a disaster. So the point that Sartre, the answer to Sartre's question is, we do what we do, whether it's unionism or socialism or feminism or whatever ism it is, we do what we do because we want the world to be a better world. And when we wake up one morning and say, everything we cared about has been corrupted and washed down the tubes, we can't stay with it. Because it isn't what we did. We didn't do it for power and for money. We did it to make the world better. And suddenly we see it's all been corrupted, and we are the first to flee from it at that point. And that's the question, sir. Why do they betray it? They betray it because it doesn't fulfill the vision that it should have. Okay, so Rav Hirsch's point about this verse is that even at the moment of the creation of the nation, this is in the middle of Shmos, in the middle of Exodus, right? God is already setting the terms of how anybody can be part of this system. How anybody who is right-minded has a place at the table, so to speak. That everything that his people are doing, his firstborn are doing, are not being done just for themselves, but to set a pattern for the world as to what it should be. And if you want to join this bandwagon, and you weren't born into it, know that there are a number of different ways to become part of it. You have to make the commitment to do it, right? But if you do, the door is open. Not in the afterlife, but in this life itself.
And Erev Rav was a part of this by being there.
The Erev Rav is a very controversial issue because there's a great deal of talk about in the Gemara how big they were they the majority, how influential they were, where they stood on. Part of the Erev Rav was Moshe's stepmom. There was within the Erev Rav
Moshe's stepmom?
Vasya.
Oh,
right.
But she became Jewish.
She became Jewish through a mikveh that said that we have a medrash that she became Jewish, but she was born Egyptian, right? Everybody became Jewish at Har Sinai. The Erev Rav became Jewish at Har Sinai too. Everybody became Jewish at that point. So it's not a question that they weren't Jewish. We are descendants. Many of us are, descendants of the Erev Rav.
Yeah, but
as part of it, right?
Right? Yaakov.
Yeah, that's not Ben Yaakov, but they're Yehudi. Absolutely, they're Yehudi. They weren't wiped out at all. They're very much part of our nation. We shouldn't think otherwise. And it's not they, we. That's the fact of the matter.
Whoever stood at Har Sinai
became Jewish.
Egyptian who joined, they become Jewish.
But the question that you raise about the Erev Rav, and we certainly have a lot of issues about the Erev Rav, and clearly the Erev Rav caused a great deal of difficulty in the desert, and probably has since. There's much written about it. Is that the Erev Rav, some of them were tremendously committed to the venture, as much as anybody else. But some of them were just simply opportunists. They were pitching for one team, and when they saw they lost, they went up into the stands and rooted for the opposing team. They saw that God had destroyed the God of the Hebrews, the God of the Jews, destroyed the gods of the greatest superpower that had ever existed. And they said, wait a second, I think it's time to change partners.
But it's not only pragmatic, it's what people do when they see miracles.
No, the problem with it, the problem with it is that to become Jewish is not just simply to become part of the most powerful God in the world. As you know, God will destroy his own when they betray his values. We see it happens.
No.
Right?
They accepting Hashem rulership because Hashem is Hashem.
No. What they did was they said, we want to join the winning team. Right? Now, it turns out that the winning team has a lot of requirements. It's not just, we're going to go bowling and drinking. There's a lot of other things required if you want to stay on the winning team. And whether you were born Jewish or you're part of the Erev Rav, right? God made a lot of demands, and we're going to see some of them here, that went on. But the people who did it to a very large degree, an opportunistic way. There were exceptions. Essentially, Yehoshua repeated the process of redemption that had ushered them out of Egypt exactly 40 years earlier. Then, too, the people had been uncircumcised, having forsaken the covenant of Abraham after the death of Yosef. Before the Exodus, Moshe required circumcision of all males as a prerequisite for participation in the Pesach offering. In the merit of the blood of circumcision and the blood of the Pesach offering, God redeemed the Jewish people from Egypt, and in their merit we will be redeemed in the future. We all know the expression in the Haggadah, in your bloods, right? Which comes from Yeheskel. Where is it? See, I do my homework today. Right. God describing our beginning from from the prophet Ezekiel. It says, "No eye pitied you to do any one of the things to clean you and care for you, to show you compassion. You were cast out onto an open field because of the loathsomeness of your being on the day you were born. Then I passed you and saw you wallowing in your blood, and I said to you, in your blood you shall live. And I said to you, in your blood you shall live." I said it twice. "I made you as numerous as the plants of the field. You increased and grew. You became to have great charm. Breasts developed and your hair sprouted, but you were naked and bare. I passed by you and saw you, and behold, your time was a time of love. And I spread the hem of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. And I took an oath to you and entered into a covenant with you, the word of the Lord Elohim, and you became mine. And I bathed you with water and washed away your blood from upon you, and I anointed you with oil." So this is the expression of "in your bloods." It's repeated twice, meaning the blood of the Pesach offering and the blood of circumcision.
It's a very mixed thing. It's a feminine or masculine.
You know what? By the language that the prophet speaks, you can see what they were living. Like, to explain something, it has to be sexuality.
There's a passion to it, absolutely. Yeah.
No.
Imagery.
What I mean,
It's images.
it's like you don't speak. Listen, you did this and this, and you was loyal to me. It doesn't speak like this. It speaks like your.
It's a love poem. It's a love poem.
It's not love poem. It's the language that people understood. Sex. You will cut it.
No, I won't. No, I won't.
No, physicality. But my question is different. It's a blood of circumcision, but it's who is described. It's a naked woman.
Yes, that's right. That's
So?
right. So we're talking about two children, but in this case, God is in the male, and Israel is in the female.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens in many situations, right?
But circumcised or male.
Yeah, the blood's referred to male. Right.
Very simple language.
No, because people can relate to basic instincts.
The Maharal and the Gur Aryeh comments that Mila characterizes the Jew as a servant of God on an individual level, and Pesach is the prototypical service of God. Each is indispensable in creating the Jewish personality who can function as God's agent in the world. These commandments, therefore, are the only two positive commandments. This is a very interesting thing. In Krisis, which is a Masechet of Gemara, there's a list of 36 different things that can cause kares. You don't want to know what they all are. They're very troubling at times. What?
And if we will do something, God forbid, by mistake, it's better to know.
You want me to read it?
Not now. Children are going to be in the room.
Another time, okay? I'll show it to you before we go, okay? Okay. But there are only two. Every one of them is a los aseh, what you should not do, a prohibition. There's two that are aseh. This is what you're required to do, right? And there's only two of the 36 that cause kares, right? That if you neglect them, cause kares, right? One is bris milah, and the other is Pesach.
If you do not...
Yeah.
Hello, Zoe. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, family. Would you like a cup of tea?
Yeah.
Okay.
So...
Can I give you a little bit of green tea? Sure.
There was a cups here. So many Jews don't have bris milah.
Okay, so first of all, the decision not to have a bris, right? There's a long debate about at what point this takes effect. Right? That is to say, there are situations where you know the people in the desert didn't have a bris,
Yes.
right? So what was their status? Some of them died without a bris, lived and died without a bris, right? So there has to be a willingness, there has to be a rebelliousness about it as well, right?
By the way, those people, well, it's going to be Tchias.
Right.
They're Jews. What's the status of them?
They're Jewish, yeah. Yeah, they stood at Har Sinai. They're Jewish.
Yeah, but they died without bris.
They're still Jews. They're Jews who died without bris. Right?
But we're talking about Kares.
What?
We're talking about Karet.
Yeah, so karet is not just the fact. It's the fact that you do it knowingly and willingly. Right? That is to say, I know how important it is to have a bris, but I'm not interested. Right? So that's a different status of somebody who says, it's a nice idea, it's a quaint custom, it's a health factor, but it's not for me.
How much it's important.
Yeah, they don't know what kares is, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Right. The institutions of Milah and Pesach, those were the two institutions that Joshua reinstituted prior to the battle in Jericho. Was everybody had to have a bris, and everybody, it was just before Pesach, so they had Pesach as well before the battle. The institution of Milah and Pesach had to be rejuvenated in order for the people to merit the entry of the land. The nation and every individual citizen required redesignation as servants of God entitled to share in the earthly heritage. Now remember, does everybody remember what day it was they passed into the land of Israel?
10th, yeah?
Yeah. So 3 days later, right? Seder night, right? On the night of the 14th is Seder night. They finally had a Seder. After, 39 years without a Seder. They had a Seder. Right?
On the third day,
how they prepared for Seder in 3 days?
What?
In a new place.
There was no bread there. They didn't live there.
What?
Probably it was 10. Just shake 10.
Say again, what?
That is, how did they prepare themselves
in 3
for
days.
Pesach?
You mean how did they clean the chametz out?
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't hard, right? They didn't have an abode. They were traveling in tents. So cleaning a tent is much easier. You just move to a clean territory.
You just put it on another
No, but there is
spot.
chametz in between the material, between the...
Cleaning is when you're setting up a tent. I know that when we go camping, right? When we put the tent away, we have to clean it before we do it.
You just shake it.
We tilt it up on its end, right, and shake it until all the crumbs are out. That's what we do. There's certainly no kazayas of chametz in our tent.
What about dishes? They had dishes.
There's a question of they had koshered their dishes by the Midianites, right? Not that long before, so they had kosher dishes, right? The question was,
again, they did what?
Remember, after the war with the Midianites, that's when the laws of kashrus are given for kalim.
So
right?
When they got the
just before Moshe died, they fought the Midianites and they took their kalim and they kashered them, right? Whether they were Pesach or not, probably not. They probably had to kasher them.
So that's my question: how they did it 3 days before Pesach? And plus, they came to Eretz Israel. They was living. Where did they
didn't have
live?
a lot of pots, tents. They were camping.
It just was on Israeli territory.
Yeah, they crossed the Yarden, right? They hadn't attacked Jericho yet, right?
And plus, they could do it before.
And they had, it's not as though they're going to go into battle like the day after everybody has a bris, right? There's a healing time too, right?
Man was not planning to clean anyhow.
There was one further issue that Yehoshua
just had a breeze.
had to deal with.
The passion to go search for the candle.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They had no. I don't think so.
No?
Is it your phone or is it?
It's you?
No, it's my phone. Do you remember telling me to check?
Oh, so let it go. It just means to check it. It's not ringing.
But it's irritating.
It's 6 o'clock. Okay, by the time you get to it, it'll stop.
You're right. I have to find out.
Okay. And it happened... Okay, so there was one final issue which Yehoshua had to deal with before the conquest of the land commenced. And it was raised very subtly during a strange and cryptic encounter with a malach, an angel of God. And it happened... This is from the book. And it happened when Yehoshua was in Jericho, that he lifted his eyes, and standing opposite him was a man with a sword drawn in his hand. Yehoshua went to him and said, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" He didn't know. And he said, "No. I am the commander of hosts of Hashem. Now I have come." Yehoshua fell before him to the ground and prostrated himself and said to him, "What does my master say to his servant?" And the commander of Hashem's host said to Yehoshua, "Remove your shoe from your foot, for the place upon which you stand is holy." And Yehoshua did so.
When in singular?
Good question. Good question. We're going to look at this very carefully. Okay?
What did it say? What's in shoe?
Take off your shoe.
Take off your shoe. Okay? So...
And stay on one foot.
Okay.
Or maybe
Because
angels, they're standing.
Moshe was asked to take the... maybe angels standing...
Angels, they're standing with feet together like on one
foot.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Maybe it was elevated.
see what the Gemara tells us about this, right? This is from Erevin, right? 63b. The Gemara offers a conflicting view of the cause of Joshua's punishment. Yehoshua never had male children.
Does he have female children?
He did. Remember, his children and the children of
What's her name?
Rahab, right, became great tzaddikim, became Nevi'im, but they were daughters.
It means his grandchildren might have been it as well. Usually people...
Yeah, it was the line that came from his daughters. Right? And Rav Levi, who attributed Joshua's lack of sons to the incident with Moshe, disagrees with Rav Abba Bar Papa. For Rav Abba Bar Papa said, Joshua was punished only because he caused Israel to abstain from marital relations for one night.
Can you get it again?
Okay.
He was punished?
Joshua was punished only because he caused Yisrael, the nation, to abstain from marital relations for one night.
When was he?
Okay, I'll continue.
Maybe before they crossed the Jordan.
Rabbi proves this. For the verse states, it was when Joshua was in the outskirts of Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and he saw someone standing opposite him with a sword drawn in his hand. Joshua asked the stranger if he was a member of the Canaanite army, and the response is written in the text. He said, "No, for I am an officer of the army of God, i.e. a malach. Now I have come." Rabbi relates the conversation which took place. The malach said to Joshua, "This afternoon you neglected the daily afternoon sacrifice." Right? They had been bringing sacrifices in the desert in the Mishkan, right? Tamid offering, right? Mincha offering in the afternoon. The angel said, "You neglected the sacrifice." Right?
Why did he neglect?
That you're in big trouble, right? You're responsible. Moshe never would have done this, right? You neglected it, right? This afternoon you neglected to offer the daily afternoon sacrifice, and now it is dark, and you have neglected Torah study. Joshua asked the angel, "For which of these," this is very Jewish, "for which of these two misdeeds did you come? What am I in trouble for? Is it that I didn't bring the sacrifice, or that I didn't learn Torah?" But know that this is very significant. The Malach answered him, "Now I have come. That is for the sin of presently being transgressed, the neglect of Torah study." Immediately in response to the angel's warning, the verse states, Joshua went that night into the valley. The word valley is Amek. Amek? Amek, right? Amek has a root meaning deep, is the shorish of it, which is interpreted here as that he had deep and profound study immediately. Joshua went that night into the valley. Rabbi Yochanan said, this teaches that Joshua delved into the profundities of Torah law. Rabbi Abba concludes that from this incident that the Jews had continued their state of siege around Jericho through the night. It follows that the Holy Ark, which had been taken to battle remained with the army and was not returned to its normal place in Gilgal. Yehoshua kept the ark in front of the warriors, right? That was an important part of it, which meant that it wasn't in the Mishkan. The Mishkan was one place, the ark was another place. When the ark is not in the Mishkan, you can't bring the sacrifice. The Mishkan has to be, the ark has to be in the Mishkan in order to bring that sacrifice, the mincha sacrifice.
Can I interrupt you for a second? They just crossed Jordan, but they didn't get to the place when...
The next day they're about to go to war. When the morning comes, they're going to attack Jericho.
My understanding is that the place where the Mishkan stood is in
the center of the camp.
Yeah, but
right.
It's supposed to be living where? It's supposed to be
in the Mishkan.
You just mentioned that it's supposed to be in another city, in Gilgal.
Yeah, the Mishkan was in Gilgal.
Yeah. It already got there after crossing Jordan. Timeline I don't understand. They're standing next to Jordan. We know that in the middle.
As soon as the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael, they erected an altar at Gilgal and assembled the tabernacle there. Mm-hmm. The tabernacle remained there during the entire 14-year period of conquest and the appointment. Scripture states clearly that the Holy Ark was taken to battle during the siege of Jericho.
Mm-hmm. The Sphinx stood there, but the Ark wasn't there.
Right. Okay. So when the Ark is not in the Mishkan, they can't bring the sacrifice. Assuming that the Ark exists, right? Mm-hmm. In the Second Temple, we know that it wasn't there, and they still brought the sacrifice, right? But now they had the Ark, and it wasn't in the Mishkan. Mm-hmm. It was with the army, right? So the consequence was that they couldn't bring the sacrifice. So because Joshua kept the ark outside of the Mishkan, there was no sacrifice brought. Right?
But it was once, or it was...
So it seems that the angel is not happy about this, right? And we have an oral tradition which states that any time the Aron HaKodesh and the divine presence with it, the Shekhinah, are not resting in their normal place, Jews are prohibited from having marital relations. Thus, Yehoshua's mistake caused everyone to abstain from marital relations. For this, he was denied sons of his own.
So when Aron HaKodesh was moved to Plishtim, Jews didn't have relations?
In principle, that's what the tradition was. I don't know if that was true.
How many months?
It was quite long. It was more than it was a long time.
It was made for good warriors.
So you're raising a very good point. I don't have the answer for it here.
Why couldn't they bring sacrifice to the Mishkan, which was out, the Aron HaKodesh who was out of Mishkan? You bring your sacrifice wherever Aron
No,
HaKodesh.
there's a Mizbeach.
Hold on. Come back to the Aron HaKodesh.
Okay.
It's not in the place now.
And it wasn't in the Second Temple, right?
It means it's out.
Right.
But what the guy is making a point,
so
it's somewhere.
No.
What are we all doing?
We're doing what we're supposed to do.
I don't understand.
No, clearly there's a difference. But there's a difference between when you don't have the Aron HaKodesh, right? Because if you didn't have the Aron HaKodesh, that would mean that the Jewish people would disappear.
Do we
right?
have it?
In 2 generations, right?
It's hidden now.
We don't have it. We
But
don't
it
have it.
exists.
Right. Maybe it exists in Shemayim, but we don't have it.
No, they say
right?
it exists under the...
They say a lot of things. We don't know where it is, right? And we don't have access to it, and we don't willingly not have it, right? You know, we're not living in a situation where we have it. We'll have it someday, God willing. It'll be tomorrow, right? But this is a situation where a decision was made by the commander of the people, by their king, really, at this point, to remove it from the Mishkan. Okay, so there's 2 views, right? One view is that we fulfill the mitzvah of building the temple ourselves, which is what God asked us to do, is to build a house for the Shekhinah, for God. The other possibility is that there's a possibility that it will just descend from on high. It's fully built, and would just land on the Temple Mount, so to speak. Soft landing.
Whatever.
The one being built is the Rambam's.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other one is the...
There's two views in the Gemara. There's two views in the Gemara.
I have
and the
a book,
Rambam.
Secrets of the Temple by the Ramhal.
Right.
And he's...
By the Ramchal.
Ramhal.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says it's like a holograph. So it comes down
Right.
from heaven as spiritual, but you can see it. It's like lights, and the physical one is built around it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a,
So now you have two
beautiful-
views harmonized into.
That is very
the
nice.
idea of hologram
Yeah.
was never existed for his time. But we can imagine how something looked
But the
like.
Ramchal could have this concept that it's, we just put it to those words today. but
We can relate to it.
But that would solve Elena's question and your question about can you build it in advance. If it can descend from on heaven, then it can happen at any moment, right? If we have to build it ourselves, we better get cracking. Right. So let me just finish here. Joshua, this is a commentary on what we read so far. Joshua is also guilty of two misdeeds: neglecting to bring the Tamid sacrifice and laxity in Torah study. However, Rav Abba held that the principle of divine punishment, measure for measure, meter keneged meter, required the punishment to correspond with the misdeeds. Someone who does not have any sons has not fulfilled the biblical commandment of having children. At least one son and one daughter are required. This punishment would only befit the transgression of preventing Jews from having marital relations at night, and not from the other two misdeeds. Right? So there's an argument as what caused this to happen to Joshua. Was it that he wasn't studying Torah when he was supposed to, the angel complained about? Was it that he didn't bring the Tamid sacrifice? No. There's another one. Rav Abba says that because the Mishkan wasn't where it's supposed to be, we know it wasn't where it's supposed to be because they didn't bring the Tamid offering, but also that they couldn't be together because it wasn't there. So for this he was punished, right?
But my question is, why would we assume that he made a mistake? He was a prophet.
We assume he made a mistake because God's angel told him he made a mistake.
But he was a prophet, he's supposed to know.
When he saw the Malach, he had his reasons, by the way, right? And as you can see, the Malach forgave him for the first one, right? The Malach said, when he saw the Malach, right, this was an angel who was there to fight his battle. The Jews could not have defeated Jericho without the help of God. They could not have done it in a normal way. Jericho was a walled city that was virtually impenetrable. That it depended on God's desire for it. So God had promised the Malach to Moshe, and Moshe had rejected the Malach and said, I don't want the Malach. I will only take you, God. It will only be you. But now, Joshua is not Moshe. And he looks up, and he realizes that this is a Malach. And there were a couple of reasons why he realized it. One was that he appeared very suddenly. Two was the majesty of this individual. But he wasn't sure if the Malach had come to punish him or to help him, or which side he was on at this point. Had he done something so bad that the Malach was on the other side now? That was his question. And the Malach said, look, I'm here to help you. You're going to win, right? But you've done two very serious things wrong. And you can't let that continue, right? All right, the Tamid offering, I understand. All day long you're preparing for this battle, right? So you missed the Tamid offering because it's more serious. Life is in danger. You're doing it. But at nighttime, you don't prepare for the battle.
No,
right?
no, this is not the reason why he missed Tamid offering.
Yes, it is.
Because he wasn't next to the Gil.
No, his argument was but having the ark there was part of the preparation for battle, right? He didn't have the ark there just because it was a site. It was part of the power of the battle, right? It was his leading weapon, so to speak.
Why the ark was with the army?
Why?
Because it was.
Haven't you seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, the movie?
Yes, but
right.
Why?
It was the essence of the power of Israel.
It doesn't work long distance?
No. It's supposed to be with you. Yeah, king has the Torah on his arm, strapped to his arm.
No, it's another reason.
What? To know that he's part of the law.
Exactly.
Right? The Aaron is the gift to the Jewish people. It leads the Jewish
But
people.
I don't understand.
It goes
Power-
before it.
This power doesn't work long distance.
It seemed to work long distance for the bad though.
Well, by the
Do I
way,
have to go to
both sides,
Jerusalem every day when I'm going to pray?
no. Listen, obviously,
I'm not going-
obviously, it works long distance. We're still here. Wherever it is, we're still here. Right? The Jews are still here. Right? It's a tool of God. But if you're going to fight a battle, right? What can give you more confidence and more strength than, stone that Moses wrote the words dictated by God on? It's a very, very.
When we bring the Torah out of them, we say these words.
People when they go into the Olympics, they take the flag in, right? You have flag bearers who go before you, right? This was something that was more than a flag bearer. This was a source of power itself.
Did David took with him Aron HaKodesh when he was fighting?
David did not, to the best of my knowledge, take it when he was fighting. He retrieved it.
He didn't need this.
They did.
This is exactly my question.
It seems they did. Well, by the way, your question is a good question because the angel has the same question. Clearly, the Malach has the same question.
Why it's supposed to be?
The Malach has the same question.
It's like here.
Maybe
There is the Aron, there is the power, there is a God here. There is no God.
Galchka, they just crossed the Jordan using the thing, using the arm.
No, but in my
Putting it in
opinion,
front
it just
and flying
shows
with it.
that belief wasn't strong. It was like local belief. Now here around this, I believe.
You may be
There,
right.
I don't believe. It was very weak.
Well, by the way, you may be very right that they were confronting great odds. They wanted to have God close to them. It's a strange idea for us to think, we want to have God close to us, right? We never see God. We never see God. We never have this experience, right? But we live in a world. By the way, don't be so quick to poo-poo it, right? We've been deprived of a direct knowledge of God. Our knowledge of God is intellectual to a very large degree, right? Yeah. And we've had it for a long time, and we've survived with it, right? But the loss of the temple and the 10 miracles that happened daily was a tremendous loss. The world will be a very different world in Messianic times when we see godliness in everything, right? It will change. And it'll probably be very hard for us to let go of. Very hard for us to let go of, right? They were driven by this. This was, call it, you may, from your point of view, you may sort of say, what kind of people were these? That they had to have a good luck charm in order to go into battle, right? But they had a closeness to God. They had a Malach in front of them. God was fighting their battles for them, right? We don't think that God does that for us. We're wrong, by the way. But generally, we don't think we do. We think, we have great weapons, we have great strategists, and, we have the cyber warfare and all that, as though this is, all separated from God. It isn't. It's all part of a miracle of God. Right? But for them, their relationship physically with godliness was miracle after miracle after miracle. They needed this. It was part of their lives. Why should it be taken away? Joshua felt that it was very important, right? The Malach said this isn't the place where it's supposed to be.
But for me, it's just very difficult to understand. Soldiers are going to war. They take this Aron HaKodesh, and their families, wives and kids and old parents. You don't need protection. We need protection. You just stay there.
Yeah, you're staying behind the
You're
lines.
going by the logic that they had. It's like, we need protection. But if somebody will attack you...
They weren't worried about it. They were on the attack. They were on the attack. Nobody was attacking them. They were going to attack somebody else. This wasn't Mitzrayim. Right? They were on the attack. The people in Jericho were waiting for the attack. Right? It wasn't a question of leaving the women and children unprotected. It wasn't an issue of that. But if you're saying, it was a very kind of primitive thing, it was certainly very different than our...
Very primitive. It's very...
but Our sophistication comes from a lack of godliness in our lives. That's why we're so sophisticated. We don't have a choice, right? If tomorrow I could look at that chair and see the godliness in that chair, the next day would I say, I can live without it? No, I'd do anything to keep it there at that moment. We're cool about it because we don't have it. They were hot about it because they had it and they didn't want to lose it, and they were dependent on it. And it's a very good thing to be dependent on God. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. In any case, let me just continue, right? Because we're not getting as far as I would have liked, but we're making some progress here. Okay, so the Gemara derives another lesson from the angel that reproached Joshua. Shmuel ben Iniah said in the name of Rav, the study of Torah is greater than the offering of daily sacrifices. For the angel said to Joshua, now I have come. Joshua was reproached for neglect of Torah study and not for neglect of the daily sacrifice. So there's this balance in our lives that we always have between study and mitzvahs, right? And what's clear here is that the angel was much more concerned with a lack of Torah study than he was with a lack of mitzvot. There's a big mitzvah is to bring the afternoon sacrifice. The angel said, that's not why I came. I was able to live with that. But it's already dark out, and it's time for Torah study, and you have no reason not to be studying Torah. That's a big problem.
Especially you're not having any relationship.
Right.
So you want to tell that God wants us to be more intellectual.
Yeah, good.
To understand.
No, see, you're twisting my words. You think that Torah study is an intellectual experience. It's not. No, Torah study is the revelation of the will of God.
Yes, but by studying, you have to be some kind of more intellectual. You have to study. You have to look from different directions to argue.
The difference between bringing sacrifice, you
just bring,
goat
and that's it. You're
and
simple.
give it to the whatever. You bring the animal to the kohen and say, here it is. This is a sacrifice.
Goodbye.
Learning the Torah, it's sitting down.
By the way, that's not how it was, right?
It's emotional
it wasn't that.
exercise.
Actually, people think that's what it was. Is that time for me to bring Pesach sacrifice, a chatas, right, a sin offering, right? So I go to the kohen, right, and writers put it this way: it's like going to the post office, right? Here's my sacrifice, right, and take care. No, it didn't go like that, right? You brought the sacrifice, and it was a detailed conversation about why are you bringing the sacrifice, what is your concerns, how do you want to make changes in your life, right? And the Kohen who was administering this process, it was a counseling process that was going on to make sure that this wouldn't happen again.
It was some kind of tshuva.
It was part of tshuva.
It's not tshuva.
It says that
you dissect your deed.
The Kohen could signal to the Leviim what they should sing. Right.
To affect the tshuva.
Right? To affect the tshuva of the person they were talking to. Mm-hmm. Sing this, right? He would signal to them, right? Because he's just bringing it casually and walking away from it. No, that's not good enough, right? He has to understand that when I shecht this animal, I'm shechting him. When I draw the blood, I'm drawing the blood from him.
Yeah, it's
right.
It could be me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
this was not bringing an envelope to the post office. Mm-hmm. This was me.
It was more emotional.
Right? And you should feel it and be conscious of it, and it should impact your life forever, right? In order for it to cleanse you, right? And there was a great deal put into it, psychologically, sensually, in terms of what you were hearing, what you were seeing, the person you were talking to. It was not a let's make a deposit here at all.
Yeah, but to sit and study Torah,
you're thinking that sitting and studying Torah
emotionally, and it's intellectually, and it's just you have to understand, and it's
if
It's all together.
Yes.
It's all together.
It is all together. It's not separate. To think that Torah...
The offering is just emotional. You have to understand, you have to see it, you have to feel it, you have to live it, and to change it.
But you can't do it unless your mind is involved in this as well. Right? It's not just emotional. In both cases, it's not just one or the other, right?
Because if you bring something, it means you know you did something wrong, and you have to try to change yourself. When you're sitting on a piece of Torah and you don't understand something, and it's like on Sunday, I was sitting with you, and then I wrote you an email, sorry, I got it. But you see, this is my point. If you don't get it, you can sit and just don't understand.
But it's a very important thing to understand, and even in some base medrashes and some kollels and some yeshivas, they don't understand this. Right? You can study the Bible. Right? Go to university, study the Bible. There are a lot of Bible courses, right? You don't have to be Jewish to study the Bible. Right? You learn the Bible. Right? You can study medicine. And after you've studied medicine intensely, you can tell people, my wife's a nutritionist. She can go through a process and tell somebody, if you eat this, you will be healthier. And if you don't eat that, you'll be healthier. Right? It comes from years of learning, a skill. Right? It would not have changed her if she didn't have a great intellectual knowledge of everything she had done. Learning Torah, right, is for sure an intellectual process. But anybody who thinks that the process is one of, when I finish my Torah studies, I will be as good at Torah as I would be if I had spent the same time in calculus. No. Learning Torah will change you. It's a guarantee. It will change you as a person. Right? It's not something calculus doesn't necessarily change you.
This is what I'm telling you. The Torah, it's all together.
That's right. So that when Yehoshua had neglected the study of Torah, right, he didn't just neglect an intellectual process, that he was sitting with his charusa and they were arguing a point, right? He neglected spiritual growth. He neglected spiritual growth, and as the leader of the nation, right, he was setting an example that it is appropriate to neglect this spiritual growth in light of the fact that there's something more important. And the Malach was saying there is no situation in which that's permissible. Mm-hmm. You don't do that, right? The requirement of setting time aside for Torah study, right, doesn't mean you have to spend 3 hours a day. Learn a Mishnah for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? But never let a morning or night go by where there isn't some learning done. That's the requirement, right? Joshua was telling the nation by his actions, it's not a priority. Priority is the war we're going to fight tomorrow. And the Malach said, this war will be lost without a spiritual connection to God.
What does it mean his question? What does it mean his question? For this or for that?
Yehoshua understood that there were two issues. And he wanted to know why it was the Malach came. Was it for this issue or for that issue? Right? What am I in trouble for here? It takes a certain amount of chutzpah, actually.
No, but he wants
to say I'm not in trouble for this, but I am for that, right?
No, he wants.
But what he wanted to exactly, he wanted to understand what the priority was, right? Mm-hmm. And the Malach said, "I didn't come in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. I came now. Mm-hmm. It's dark now. Where there's no council of war, there's no preparations right now. It's done. Now is the time when you should be studying Torah, and you're not doing it now." Mm-hmm. Now I have a problem.
It means he would come in the afternoon if it would be for...
If it was upsetting enough to God, he would have come in the afternoon with the sword, right? Mm-hmm. The other reason Joshua knew that he was a Malach was that nobody else saw the Malach.
Okay.
He was in a crowd, and nobody else saw the Malach, and the Malach was huge. right? Only he saw it, and he realized, that it was Moloch. He also, he thought for a moment, could it be a demon? Because a demon could have all these qualities, right? But the use of saying, I am part of God's army, a demon can't say. Using God's name to do it. It would have destroyed the demon.
So what's the story with the one shoe?
What?
The story with one shoe.
So it's a very good point. That's where I saw that in Man Was. The one shoe is actually it's not a reference to the fact that Moshe took off two shoes. It's something else. It's actually it's a comment about marital relations.
I just thought about this.
Chalitza.
You got
I
it.
just thought about this.
You got it.
I thought and you said this.
Yeah, you got it. That's what it is.
It doesn't fit.
Yeah. He was being told there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay. Take off a shoe.
I don't understand. You're
that's what the Medrash says.
Do you want to turn it off and explain a little bit clearer?
I just thought about this.
Okay, so what we'll do is we got to the angel. I just want to say one other thing about this. It's worth noting because you would want to know what happened next, right? That was it.
He sees the angel have a child.
You heard the whole piece of the angel.
You have to explain to Shane what is chalitza. You know what is chalitza?
Pardon?
Chalitza. Just to explain what he's talking about.
Yeah, let me just find this one thing because it's.
Is that when someone refuses to take their brother's wife?
Exactly.
Okay, let me just read you the whole thing, right? Beginning to end. When Joshua was in Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and he saw a man standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. Joshua went toward him and said, Are you for us or for our enemies? No, I am not a human warrior, he answered. I am an officer of God's army. Now I have come. Joshua fell on his face and bowed and said, What does my master command of his servant? Then the officer of God's army said to Joshua, Take your shoe off your foot, for the place on which you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so.
What is the connection?
And Jericho was completely closed off before the children of Israel. No one went out, no one went in. It's over. That was it.